Okay, folks, I think we can get started. We have a quorum and we have a city planner, so we're in good shape. Welcome to the regular July NPU-F meeting. Today is July 17th, 2024. Co-hosting with me tonight is Kay Stevenson, and also present is our assigned planner, Doug Young, and you'll be hearing from Doug later in the meeting. NPU-F has two agendas, the full agenda, which is the one with the phone numbers on the front. We also use a consent agenda, which includes applications, which historically this NPU has approved with no discussion. If you are here for an application tonight, please check the full agenda to find it. Both agendas are now in the chat. I know most people have used Zoom since the pandemic, but for those who are using it for the first time or need a quick refresher, there's some things that you'll want to know. Zoom publishes a participant list, which includes everyone who is attending tonight's meeting. Your name will be at the top of the list. If there's more than one person using the same device, please include both names in the participant list so that we can get an accurate attendance report. This will also be important for voting. To change or add a name, you just click on, hover your arrow over your name and click on more to the right of your name so that you have an option to include another, to rename. If someone else's name is showing up in your windows, then please correct it to your own. The mute button, which looks like a microphone, can be found at the bottom of most screens. Please stay muted unless you are called on. If you wish to speak, please use the raise your hand icon, which is found under the reaction tab. Also at the bottom, which is also at the bottom of the screen. Be sure you click on the correct icon. Sometimes folks will hit a thumbs up and that disappears after 10 seconds. Speakers will be called on in the order the hands are raised. If you have called in and want to raise your hand, just click on *9 on your phone. To mute or unmute, push *6. All residents of NPU-F may vote on any issue unless there is a financial interest in the application or motion. Property owners may not vote on their applications, but can vote on any other. If you're a business owner, but not an NPU resident, you may vote if you have met the requirements as described in our bylaws. The voting rules are at the bottom of the full agenda. Please refrain from voting if you do not live in NPU-F. We have an unusually short agenda tonight, with most of the applications being deferred. For these, I will ask if there are any objections or for unanimous consent. When a motion is requested, I will recognize the first two people who speak up. This is the only exception to the raise your hand vote. Please follow our NPU-F meeting protocol. Keep all questions and comments germane so that the topic being addressed and respectful of everyone in the meeting. To allow everyone an opportunity to speak, I'm going to ask that you only speak once on a topic unless you are asked for clarification or a question on previous remarks. There is also a chat where you can send messages to everyone or to an individual. If I see that the comments become inappropriate, have false information, are rude, or mean-spirited, I will turn off the chat for the remainder of the meeting. I also reserve the right to put you in a timeout penalty box if you break the protocol. Most people who attend NPU-F meetings are here because they feel strongly about an application. I especially want to hear from you if you're opposed. And if I'm moving too quickly through the agenda, please call me out. Sometimes I get on a roll and forget some important issues. So that we can all hear and can get a good recording, it's important that only one person speak at a time. If we are picking up background noise or you interrupt or hog the floor, you will be muted. It's election time again. A friendly reminder that any form of campaigning is not allowed at any NPU meetings. You'll note at the top of the agenda, the 50th anniversary of NPU icon. Mayor Jackson created the NPU system in 1974 to ensure that folks had input into how their neighborhoods were developed. So we are here tonight because the NPU system provides citizens of Atlanta the opportunity to provide recommendations and comments on applications and legislative changes that impact our quality of life. It is our responsibility to tell them what we think and, when appropriate, to share the strength of that opinion through NPU vote counts. All votes taken at the NPU are only recommendations, however. Final decisions are made by city boards, city administrators, or city council, and I hope that you will take advantage of expressing your opinion there as well, either in writing, by phone, or by making a comment during public hearing opportunities. First order of business tonight is to adopt the agenda. Are there any additions to tonight's agenda? Please speak up or raise your hand. I see none. Are there any objections to adopting the agenda this evening? Then the agenda is adopted without objection. The June 2024 minutes are ready to be approved. Thanks to Kay and our AI bot for producing the June minutes. They've been posted on the NPU-F website, and a link was also provided to those on the NPU's mailing list. You can also find them in the chat. Are there any additions or corrections to the June 2024 minutes? Additions or corrections? Okay, seeing none. Are there any objections to adopting the 2024 minutes? Okay, the June 2024 minutes are adopted without objection. I have a couple quick announcements. The NPU-F Executive Committee and anyone else who may be interested will meet via Zoom next on a Monday night, July 29th, that's a week from Monday, at 7 p.m. to review recommendations for the NPU-F bylaw and policy sheet. This is something that we are required to do every year by city ordinance. Proposed amendments will be discussed at the August meeting and a vote taken in September. By ordinance, NPU bylaws must be confirmed by an NPU vote every September and sent to city planning. More information can be found on the consent agenda, including the timetable for adoption. The second announcement is that Club Platinum is on the July 23rd License Review Board agenda as a due cause for denial of application. The LRB meets at City Hall at 5 p.m. with public comment at the beginning of the agenda. It's really important that we have butts and seats for this application. And then finally, don't forget to check out the consent agenda for information on Plan A, which is the CDP, and Atlanta Zoning 2.0. The deadline for comments on Plan A is Friday, July 19th. So we only have 2 days to complete the first draft for review and comment. Okay, we're now going to move to reports from city departmental representatives. Is there anyone here from Atlanta Fire? I didn't see everyone that came in the room, so I'm not sure that I caught. Atlanta Fire. APD, Zone 2 or Zone 6?
Good evening, Ben Vane, Zone 2.
Oh, welcome, Major Vanes.
Nice to see you all.
It's good to see you too.
So I'll give a quick rundown of crime citywide, just an overview. Year to date, citywide, we're down 1%. Zone 1, Northwest Atlanta, is plus 12%. Zone 2, we're down 12%. Zone 3, Southeast Atlanta, is down 16%. Zone 4, Southwest Atlanta, is up 8%. Zone 5, which is downtown and midtown, is plus 8%. I'm sorry, plus 14%. And Zone 6, which encompasses some of NPU-F, is down 11%. So to drill down a little bit for Zone 2, in the 28-day or the last month or so for NPU-F, there's been 16 Part 1 crimes. 10 of those have been auto thefts or entering autos, 5 each. 2 of the motor vehicle thefts were left running. So obviously we encourage not to leave your car running at the gas pumps, or if you're going to run into the gas station or in a business, take your keys with you. Don't leave your key fobs in the vehicle. And for theft for motor vehicles, our big focus still remains on safe storage of firearms, keeping your car clean. And by that, we mean no bags, electronics, laptops, cell phones, any items of value that somebody can walk by and look into for a crime of opportunity, or for the professional thieves that are looking for firearms or expensive items. I will say for Zone 2 officers, they're doing a great job. So far, we lead the city with nearly 20,000 traffic stops in 2024, and we lead the city with over 4,000 arrests, with 358 being on Beat 212, which part of that encompasses NPU-F, several of those for burglary, and many of those are for quality of life offenses and traffic offenses. But it just shows the proactivity and the engagement for the officers in Zone 2. I will touch on the lure on Cheshire Bridge as well as Onyx. Our morning watch team, as well as our crime suppression team, still patrol those areas regularly, monitor those clubs, and communicate regularly with Lieutenant Cotter and license and permits to ensure they're operating within city ordinance as far as who they're serving and business operations hours. So that's a brief overview for Zone 2. If anybody has any questions.
If you have a question for Major Vanes, please raise your hand. Okay.
Major, I've had several questions from the community, different neighborhoods that are struggling to understand where the boundaries are, both between Zone 2 and Zone 6, and then within, especially within Zone 2, I have a pretty good sense of where the boundaries are for each beat in Zone 6, because that's where I live. But we don't have a good idea of where the beat boundaries are in Zone 2 that apply to NPU-F, so that we can go into the online system and pull up neighborhood specific statistics and that sort of thing. Have you got some kind of a map or something you could share with us that would help everybody understand where they're located?
Yes, that's a great question. What I will do is I will snip a map of the border of NPU-F for Zone 2 and Zone 6, where that border lies, and then it'll show where it hits with 211 and 210, and you can get an overview of where those boundaries and where those neighborhoods fall. And I will zoom in and I'll send it to Debbie so she can share with everybody.
Okay, that's great. And that is it 210, 211 and 212, are those the two that fall within NPU-F for you?
Yes, ma'am. Just a piece of 211, just a small piece of 211, but the majority of NPU-F is in 212. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. Mike Roman? You have your hand up? Don't forget to take.
I think Mike is fire rescue.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Any other questions for Major Vanes?
I think Chief Roman is speaking, but muted.
Oh. Chief
Thank
Roman? And I don't see his name. Oh, here it is. No, he's not muted.
But we can't hear him.
No. Wonder if he can hear us.
He can hear us.
Be one of those nights.
Well, maybe we can, it looks like he logged out. Maybe he'll come back in. We can pick up.
Okay. Is there anyone here from Zone 6? Let's see any names.
I can give a Zone 6 update a little later, Debbie, from our State of the Zone meeting.
Okay, great. Thanks, Kay. All right, Major Veins, thanks for being here tonight.
Thank you all. Have a great night.
Thank you. And now, Chief Roman,
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
we can hear you now.
Outstanding. I apologize for that. It's Chief Roman from Atlanta Fire, Battalion 3. My office is located out of Midtown neighborhood. My district covers Midtown, downtown, Virginia Highlands area, but we do respond mostly Northwest and Northeast Atlanta. I'm here to answer any questions. As far as response reporting, nothing extreme to report on. General, mostly medical rescue type incidents, fire response, fire alarm. Couple positive notes to speak on is we do have some new fire recruits coming out to the neighborhoods. They graduated 2 nights ago. They will be reporting tomorrow morning to their respective stations. We're excited to have new membership in the department. We are actively recruiting to bring up the numbers of our staff. If anyone's interested, please reach out to me and I can put you in touch with the recruitment office if you have family or friends that are interested in fire service with Atlanta Rescue. We also do have some new apparatus that are going to be delivered within the next 100 days, which is nice to have to replace some of our equipment. So if you happen to see new fire trucks in the near future, that's going to be those new units. I don't know specifically where they're going to end up. However, we will have a couple units in the Midtown locations, in East Midtown out of Station 11. One other topic to mention out of safety concern is the closed door campaign. We've had that go on for a couple years, to where if people sleep in the evening, to please shut your doors. That makes a world of difference as far as safety goes. When if you do happen to have a fire incident, a bedroom door being closed can actually save your life. We've seen it in the city, and it's been reported and studied nationwide that a closed door at night is much safer than an open door. That way it reduces smoke and fire spread in the home. Outside of that, I don't have anything else to report. If you have any questions or need specifics from the fire department, please reach out to me. My phone number and email is in the chat.
Great, thank you. Kay, did you have a question for the chief?
Yeah, just a quick question, and I don't know if this is something you can answer or not, but over the last year or so, maybe several years, we keep hearing about really long delays in ambulance showing up to injuries and that sort of thing. And I'm wondering, if that's something that you have any influence on, and if you're seeing any improvement or changes in those response times.
So our ambulance service is contracted through Grady EMS.
Right.
And so they're the sole provider within city limits. When you go to East Atlanta side, it's through DeKalb County. And that's partially of a state thing because of how the EMS licensing goes and how Grady has their essentially business model districting is, in which it's been going on that way for years and it's been fine. As far as unit responses, because Grady is a separate agency and entity, we have control of it to a degree, but they are a private entity, private company, and they provide their own trucks and their own manpower and personnel, that sort of thing, and supplies and equipment. But we are in constant contact with them. We have our EMS division, which has its own section of chiefs and captains and paramedics that work in that area. There's constantly meetings. We call them QAs and QIs, where they look at reports, response times, and they sit at a table and they question, why was this response time 7 minutes versus 4 minutes, and then like Grady's a very mobile unit. They don't have Grady stations like you see the fire stations, the police precinct.
Mm-hmm.
There's no brick and mortar outside of just their administrative offices. So Grady units are very mobile. So if there's a high call volume, certain times of the day, those units move to those areas where the calls are. And then if things are very low, 911's a quiet evening, quiet afternoon, you will see grading ambulances generally parked around the corner, or they're staging over at a gas station where they could park freely until they wait for the next call. So they respond in that nature outside of us, where we have fixed locations like the fire station. But we're in the same nature. If we have a lot of busy calls or big event where a lot of units are drawn out of that community, we will move our apparatus and personnel to adjust the needs. So like example, East Atlanta is not left empty. We'll move a couple fire units over there to spread coverage for that purpose. In case something does happen, you will have a quicker response. As far as the data, I don't have that readily available. If it's something you really need, we can look into it. And of course, open record requests are always available to those in the public if they want that information. But it's one of those where I'd have to look at specific data. But lately, I haven't had any reports or nothing that come through my office as a concern. Those who work with me, they generally would report to me as to, I had to wait 8 minutes for an ambulance on this last call. I haven't heard that lately. So it may be an old issue for the most part, but recently I haven't had that specific complaint or concern.
Okay, thank you. That's good to hear that you haven't been hearing those complaints lately, because not to do my personal anecdote, but I waited an hour on an ambulance one time when I had a head injury and ended up having someone else take me to the hospital. So, we hope that kind of thing isn't continuing to go on.
No, and I hate to hear that. And if it's something that's, was this something recent, or was this like?
No, this was like 2 years ago. So that's why I was trying to get a sense if things were better.
No, and I'm sorry for that. And it's, specifics would need to be looked into as far as things. But generally it's one of those where if let's say they have 35 ambulances, and this is an example, and 40 calls come across 911 in 10 minutes. All those ambulances get assigned, right? And then they respond and do the due diligence, transport patients. So it's one of those where, if the resources get scarce for whatever, there's an immediate spike, then, it is what it is, unfortunate to a degree, but they do preparation. As fire department, we do the same thing. We make adjustments. We try to spread the coverage around the city, and we make things. That's why we're a 24-hour operation. And Grady is the same way. But those QA/QI meetings with the EMS supervisors, they do a lot of due diligence, and we do hold them accountable as they hold us. So it's a check and balances system. We provide the first responders, paramedic services through the fire apparatus all the time. That's a 24-hour operation for us. We have enhanced our program with Station 37, and we do have our own ambulances on the road right now. It's just a couple, but we have enhanced the EMS program because of what happened in the past.
Right.
And we've had great support through the mayor's office, the city council, with the funding and stuff. We built a brand new station. We were essentially building a whole new division because of that. And that's been a few years in progress. And we're finally got our feet on the ground, stations built, apparatus in the city, civilian personnel manning those, doing the manpower for the ambulances. So we have those people in place now.
Okay, that's great to hear. Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Are there any other questions for Chief Roman? I don't see any hands raised, Chief. Oh, Francis Johnston?
Thank you, Debbie. At a recent Piedmont Heights community meeting, it was reported that fire trucks from both the Monroe Fire Station and the Atlantic Station Fire Station were severely damaged while they were on the interstates responding to doing traffic control following accidents. Can you speak to that? Yeah,
so in the recent past, with a couple months maybe, we did have a couple medical calls, MVA acts. I can't remember the specifics on those two events, just because the big distraction was the accident. So fire apparatus was struck by a civilian vehicle on the interstate on both instances. So it was two separate calls, two separate dates. And the purpose of those apparatus are in place to protect the personnel that are working the event. So is an example of a car runs into a median, or there's an accident on the interstate, or medical emergency, someone pulled over because they no longer can drive. The fire engine Oftentimes the paramedic unit will position, the personnel will get out and provide aid and investigate the incident. Because the interstate environment and being so dangerous and the sheer volume of vehicles, we dispatch a ladder unit, a much larger fire truck with a few more lights on it, and they position themselves ahead of the incident at an angle to provide a safety barrier. It's very common practice. We do training with it. It's traffic management incident training that we provide. We've been doing it for years. We do it in conjunction with Georgia DOT and the HERO units, APD and GSP. So everyone's on the same page as far as what's going on, how we provide such coverage. And it actually makes the calls go by a lot smoother and makes them faster in the end. But with that being said, those specific times, those vehicles were struck by other private vehicles on the interstate and did cause some damage to where we had to remove those apparatus out of service. Then we send them to our maintenance shop to get evaluated and essentially begin repairs or replacement process for those units.
Interesting. Great.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, I don't see any other hands or hear anyone. So,
okay.
Chief Roman, thanks for being here tonight.
Yes, I hope everyone has a wonderful evening. Thank you. I'll stay on a few more minutes if anyone needs to ask me something on the side, but my email and phone number are available.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Officer Joseph Young, APD Code Enforcement.
Good evening, everyone. All right, just reporting in from APD Code Enforcement. Just want to remind everyone that it is the growing season right now. A lot of overgrowth that I'm seeing in the area is simply due to people taking a little bit too long in between cuts and their grass getting a little high. Just a reminder to everyone that anything over 12 inches of growth is considered overgrowth, or anything that is encroaching on a neighboring property, anything unintentional that's non-decorative, like ivy growing up the house, or anytime there's weeds growing up on the house, that is considered overgrowth as well, and anything encroaching on the right of way. Does anyone have any questions for me tonight, or any specific cases they would like me to look into? All right, if anyone doesn't have anything, again, remember, if you see any junk trash debris on a property, any overgrowth, things of that nature, if anyone here lives in a multi-family housing unit, meaning an apartment building, condo, anything of that nature, we have our new Safe and Secure Housing Initiative team. They are investigating those cases now. So just be sure to reach out to 311. And make a complaint if you're having any issues, interior issues in one of those houses, or in any of those type of properties, or if you see anything going on any properties that you need us to take a look at. So other than that, if anyone has any questions or needs me for anything, I'm going to put my information in the chat. You can always reach out to me via text, email, or just give me a call. But again, any issues, definitely reach out to 311. And you can still give me a call to discuss them.
Thanks, Officer Young.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is Aisha Brown from Watershed Management.
Yes, I am here. Thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Aisha Brown. I am the representative or ambassador for DWM, Department of Watershed Management. I really don't have anything new, just a continuation of what DWM is doing for the annual stormwater project. Is designed to restore existing public storm sewers to properly functioning storm sewer systems. The construction includes storm sewer system cleaning, condition assessment, inlet reconstruction, and pipe repairs and replacement. So our DWM personnel, they are out there to determine if additional work is necessary. And the only other ongoing thing that I've spoke about before is that we do have the rain barrel and composting workshops. There are 2 months left. We have August 8th, which is for the rain barrel. The 22nd is for the compost. And then again, lastly, in September 12th, they have the workshop for the rain barrel, and the 26th for the compost. That is all that I have for this evening. If you have any questions, I will do my best to answer, but I would say if you do have a concern in your community, definitely reach out to 311, but please also, you can follow up with me. I have left my contact information in the chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Are there
You're
any
welcome.
questions for her tonight? This is watershed management. Okay, I don't see any, but she is in the chat. ATL 311. Tamika?
Good evening, everyone. My name is Tamika. I am officially your new ambassador as of July. We made some changes, so I will be over NPU-F. And so a couple of the changes that we've made is that we've extended our hours to midnight as of July 1st. So you guys can call in and make any inquiries that you would like to from 7 a.m. to midnight. Now, Department of Watershed billing side does close at 5:30. So we would not be able to answer any billing questions, but any emergencies like water main breaks, potholes, uh, what else? Missed trash, things like that, we will still be able to assist with. Also, we have enhanced our automated system. So when you now dial into 311, you can select option 2 and you will be directed to APD's non-emergency. I know APD has been pushing the agenda, the difference between 311 and 911. And so whenever you're in doubt, call 311. We can get you routed in the right direction if necessary. We've also have our new chat feature. Her name is Ava. She is our virtual assistant. She also launched. And with the virtual assistant, you can also chat us with less wait time about your inquiries. Again, Department of Watershed has not uploaded their feature as of yet. So any billing questions would still have to call in. But all other inquiries, you can chat with us, call us, social media, or you can even email us. At this time, I open the floor for any questions, concerns.
Are there any questions for Ms. Merriweather? I have a question. If your 311 is now going to be operational till midnight, does that include the oh Lord, I forgot their names. I'll get back to you. Does anyone else have any questions?
Were you thinking of PAD?
Yes, I am. Thank you.
So yes, Pat. So their operational hours are with ours as well. I don't know how many agents signed on or signed up for this extended hours, but that's one of the reasons I am now your permanent NPU ambassador, because there was a shift. And a lot of people gravitated to the later shift. So I am permanent. I know Miss Debbie asked me last time and I wasn't quite sure, but it is permanent now. So
Okay, great. Glad to have you with us. And thanks, Kay. Any other questions? Or you can find her in the chat. There is a question in the chat for you. Would you please share your email? Or is
okay.
that
So the email is going to be ATL311 at Atlanta spelled out GA.gov. And it should also be in the 5 pathways to us. I did list it. I can repost it if I need to.
Okay, great. Thank you for being here tonight. We'll see you next month. And is there,
See you next.
Ms. Bowles, Janelle Bowles, the Solicitor Senior Counsel in the city's solicitor's office?
Hello, everyone. Janelle Bowles here with the Office of the City Solicitor. Good evening. I did put my name and phone number and email in the chat. And as it happens, the team that Officer Joseph Young spoke about with code enforcement with the new Safe and Secure Housing Initiative, I actually am an attorney in the solicitor's office that works directly with the solicitor's arm of that. So we litigate those violations, code violations, specifically in the multifamily dwellings. But if anyone has any questions, any concerns that I can take back to my office, if it's not something that I can assist you with, I can point you in the right direction. Do not have any other comments. If anyone has any questions, you can let me know.
Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Bowles? I don't see any hands raised. We have a very quiet group tonight. Thank you. Thank you for
Thank
being
you.
here again.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Now, are there any other representatives from city departments that are here tonight to give a presentation?
Yes, I'm here.
Oh,
Good,
whoops.
good evening.
Sorry.
Pete Rand here, DPW Suite Officer. I just want to remind everyone that construction debris is prohibited to dispose of through the city collection. However, there are two exceptions to that prohibition. One is through your bulk collection schedule. Yes, you can schedule bulk collection as long as you do not exceed 4 cubic yards, and your debris does not include any roofing shingle, any plaster, brick, or concrete. You can schedule for bulk as long as those debris are actually what is derived from maintaining your property. So if you're using a contractor to do work, the contractor must take away all of those debris. There is also an exception where small project, some of us is do-it-yourself guys or do-it-yourself girls. You can dispose of those debris in your trash can as long as they're not protruding, they're not sticking out, and you're not putting more than 35 pounds in total with any trash or anything else. It does not exceed 35 pounds. So that's it for me for tonight. Is there any question? I'll try my best to answer, or if I don't know the answer, I'll point you to the direction where your concern can be answered.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions for Officer Francis? I don't see any hands raised tonight. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. Thank you for being here tonight.
Have a great night, everyone.
Hi, Debbie, this is Clyde Mitchell.
Yes, Clyde.
Hey, I'm a relationship manager out of the Ombudsman's office. For those of you that do not know, I don't have a report to give, but just to let your NPU know that we are available if there are cases or situations where orders or ticket orders have been placed in but have not been fulfilled for a period of time. You can come to talk to us about that, and we probably can escalate that. Also, if there's any discord or you're looking for information, please give us a call or just email us. My information is in the chat, and we look forward to working with you. It's been a minute. I have not been a part of your meeting since April, but it's good being back.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anyone else from the city? If not, we're going to move to comments from elected officials. And I believe Councilmember Alex Wan is in the room.
Yep. Hey, thanks, Debbie, and thanks everybody for giving me a chance to give a couple of updates. Wanted to go back to Francis Johnson's question about the fire equipment. I did have a conversation directly with the fire chief about it, and just to reassure everybody, 3 things are happening. Number one, while those 2 pieces of equipment are out, they're just kind of rebalancing and leveraging what equipment we do have to make sure there are no gaps in coverage. It's not ideal, but it'll get us kind of through the period where, number 2, we're working on accelerating the repairs on those 2 pieces of equipment so that we can get them back in service. But the best news that I got from him is that you probably heard that about 6 months ago, council authorized the funding of a significant order of fire equipment. We're going to start seeing the delivery of those by the end of July. So the timing, we're close to kind of getting across the finish line in terms of making sure that we've got sufficient coverage in equipment. So I just wanted to share that with you since I wasn't able to share it at the Piedmont Heights meeting. 2 updates. First one, if I'm not sure if you were, for those that were not able to attend, we had a community meeting last week regarding the Monroe, and I'm going to have to start calling it Safer Streets now. They changed the name on it from Complete Streets to Safer Streets, and I understand the technical reason is because the bike lanes, if you don't have bike lanes, it's not considered a complete street. And just to let everybody know, I mean, the whole thought process behind the bike lanes, which were actually removed many iterations ago, pre-2021, it's because most of the bike paths and maps are now directing cyclists to either the 10th Street cycle or the Beltline. So when you have the Beltline running parallel to Monroe, it's actually a safer place for them versus the, and we've all seen the traffic that goes down Monroe in terms of cyclist safety. I was hoping by now the Atlanta Department of Transportation would have provided us with a link to the designs that they shared. As soon as I get those, or as soon as they're posted, I will provide that link back out in my next newsletter, or I'll definitely make sure I share it with the neighborhood presidents. The timeline that was shared with me at the meeting is that the intent and the hope is by the end of the year to go out with the RFP for construction, with actual dirt being moved as early as second quarter, potentially second quarter of 2025. So we are moving. I would also suggest that to the extent that when you see the design and plans, if you have any comments, still submit that to Atlanta Department of Transportation. I understand that while they're, at this point, because of budget and scheduling concerns, it's just fine tuning and tweaking. There is not going to be any sort of major design overhaul just to make sure we keep this project moving forward. So I wanted to share that with you. Second, and I see the comment in the chat, I was actually going to report on that tonight as well, the 10th and Monroe intersection. I wish I had a little bit better news for everybody. I originally thought that we would be done with that by the time school starts on August 1st. That is not going to be the case, unfortunately. It'll be later in August when the intersection is finally done, probably, unfortunately, closer to Labor Day. All that said, Beltline is working with Midtown High School on a couple things. One is when they do the bus test routes, we'll make sure that everything is ready and clear for that. Hang on, I had my notes up. And that when school starts, they're going to make sure that the intersection, any work on the intersection, there's proper signage for students that are using it, as well as anybody that's driving to and through the intersection. So just wanted to let y'all know that. I mean, I'm pushing Beltline as hard as I can, but as y'all know, these construction projects take time, and we want to make sure that's done right. And I appreciate everybody's patience when we shut the intersection down for that full weekend. The last, actually, those are really the only things I had. Debbie, I don't know if we have time to take questions. I do see one from Sharon Cohen about a roundabout for Amsterdam Monroe. Is there one on the Monroe Safer Streets design? The answer is no. There is one at Park and Monroe, but not at Amsterdam. And there is a proposed new kind of pedestrian intersection and crosswalk at Westminster. So I guess kind of those are the key takeaways from the meeting that last week. So Debbie, can I keep taking questions? I see
Yeah, let's go
James
ahead if
Carson.
anyone has any questions. Well, we've got you.
I see,
Anyone have any questions for Alex?
I see James Carson with his hand up, with his real hand up, not the digital hand.
Oh. Okay, go ahead, James. I don't see. Unless you're just waving hi.
I think you need to take yourself off mute, Mr. Carson. Still on mute. Still on mute.
It's gonna be one of those nights.
I know. So, do you want to type your question in the chat and we can do it that way? Obviously, I'm seeing those, so. Okay, what is happening with the ATL Botanical Garden Development Service Road? I have not gotten an update from anybody on that in terms of the applicant or the Parks Department. I know that the last time I got an update, there was a Parks Department was requesting a review of the plans because they wanted to be able to, I mean, ultimately they have to review it and sign off of it before anything else can move forward. So that was where I last heard things were at, and that was probably about 4 weeks ago. So I'm happy to go back and check and see what I can find out about that.
Anyone else?
And then Matt Gunther is routing Monroe down Cayuga to avoid the Beltline entirely and use the Virginia Avenue Bridge still off the table. I have to look at the design, but of Monroe Safer Streets, but I do know that the Virginia Avenue Bridge is definitely off the table. I don't think that was ever on the table for a number of reasons. For ADA compliance, you'd have to start the bridge so far back on the Beltline, and it would go so far into the park, into the bowl, the grassy area, that it did not make sense. And I'll be honest with you, I'm a little reticent, as probably a lot of folks in our district are, in terms of adding any more bridges into our area right now, given kind of the challenges we're having with it. But there is the design. I don't know the specifics on it. I got a glance of it, of a kind of improved delineation of where Virginia comes into Monroe. There is a closing off of the Woody's Cheesesteak parking lot so that it's no longer a cut through or another alternate cut through. So you'll be able to see a lot more detail once I can get the digital plans out to everybody. Oh, Virginia Avenue already has a bridge. That's what I'm referring to. So yeah, I think the best thing to do is let me get that link to the updated design, get that out, and then we can continue to field questions based on that. And then James, I see the suggestion about the crossing guards. I'll relay that over to Beltline in terms of when school and classes start to encourage safety for the students. So thank you.
Does anyone else have any questions? I think that's it.
Okay. Thanks, everybody. I'll drop my contact information in the chat as well.
Great, thank you. Thanks for being here tonight. Are there any other elected officials that are here tonight, or a representative from an elected official's office? Okay, I don't hear anybody. Then we are going to move on to our matters for voting. The first item on to vote on is the consent agenda. These are items that the NPU has approved without any comment previously. We have 3 items on the agenda, and for the most part, they are, well, they're non-issues. The first is the ultimate family reunion. And I heard late this afternoon that the January I'm sorry, July 20th date is being canceled because of the weather and it will be rescheduled. The other two items on the agenda are two variance applications. One's V2484 at 2236 Malante Drive. The recommendation is to defer this application at the request of the applicant. And the last application is V24113. This is at 1030 Los Angeles Avenue Northeast, and this is also a deferral. So three items are on the application, and there really is no need for comment here. Is there anyone here that wants to remove one of these items from the consent agenda? Okay. Is there anyone here that's opposed to any of these applications? All right, I didn't see anybody. Is there a motion?
Move to support or to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, thanks, Kay. Is there a second? Is there a second to approve the consent agenda?
I'll second.
Thank you. And I see your face, but not your name. I'm sorry.
Vicki Davis.
Thank you, Vicki. Okay, so motion's been made and properly seconded to approve the consent agenda of these three applications. All those in favor, please raise your hand using the hand raise under the reactions tab, which you should be able to find at the bottom of your screen. And if you are on a phone, you can raise your hand by clicking on *9. Okay, there is one person that found the hand clap icon and another one that has a thumbs up. If you're in favor, please check your icon to raise your hand. Okay, I don't see the number moving anymore. That's 29 ayes. Let me lower the hands. Is there anyone that is opposed to these the recommendations on the consent agenda? Okay, so let me check in. I see two hands raised, and let me just check in with you. Can you tell me why you're opposed to approving the deferrals? Gloria or Jean McCarthy?
Sorry, I hit it too late. I was trying to approve. This is
Oh.
Jean.
Oh, okay, thank you. Then I'm going to change that to 30 ayes. And Gloria?
I approve also. I'm sorry, I clicked the wrong thing.
All righty, so the number goes up to 31 ayes. Okay, and 0 nays. The consent agenda is approved.
Debbie, there was one question about the consent agenda, about the Ultimate Family Reunion application. Is that a Piedmont Park event? Are
Yeah.
they the host?
Piedmont Park is the host.
Okay.
And I got 2 emails today. One that said that it was canceled, another said they were going to reschedule. So it should pop up on our agenda sometime later in the year, I think. Okay, moving on to other applications. Is anyone here from Pure Heat? Melissa Scott is the event organizer. Is she here? Oh, okay. Melissa, I see that you're here in the chat. Can you unmute yourself and tell us about Pure Heat?
There we are. Okay. I'm acting like an old person with Instagram for the first time. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. We've all
Okay.
had moments like
Yes.
that.
Yes. Sorry about that. So this year, there's a small change, big change, but the only difference between this year and all of the previous years is that we are moving to 2 days. 2024 is actually playing host to the Global Black Pride, which will be the first year for Global Black Pride being stateside. Historically, during the pandemic, it was online. They did a first year in person in Toronto. And this year, they're needing to go stateside, and they will be chose Atlanta as the host city for Global Black Pride. So what we did was we will have our normal Pure Heat Community Festival that takes place on Sunday, September 1st. And the difference this year will be that we will add Saturday, August the 31st as the second day to the festival. So that's a big change. The other change that I would consider, a big change would be the fact that we are moving the main stage from 10th and Charles Allen to the Meadow. So the main stage will now be at the Meadow, and the typical stage that we use, which is at 10th and Charles Allen, will now play host to the LGBTQ Youth Festival that lives within the Pure Heat Community Festival.
Okay, so how many stages will you have this year?
2 stages, and the other difference would be that last year we had basically a house music DJ setup, and that will now live, instead of at Dockside, that'll now live under the pavilion. So if you, I don't know if anyone here attended the festival last year. So in 2023, the house music stage with all the house music DJs for the 50 and up audience, it lived at Dockside. For 2024, that portion of the festival will live under the pavilion where the youth festival used to live. And the youth festival is now moving to 10th and Charles Allen, and the main stage is moving to the Meadow for 2024.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Melissa and Pure Heat? This is a festival that has been in the park for as long as I can remember. Okay, there is a question in the chat. And where on the Meadow will that stage be placed? In which direction will it face?
Sure. So what we did was, just to not overcomplicate things, we literally mimicked the setup for Atlanta Pride from the previous years. The back of the stage will live with 10th Street being to the back. No lane closures, of course. We'll stage at the Park Tavern for vendors so that we aren't blocking 10th Street, because that's a pain. And I live in Midtown as well, so it's a complete pain when festivals are loading in on 10th Street. So what we're gonna do is use the Park Tavern parking lot as a staging place for vendors. We'll radio over, they'll come in 5 at a time. We'll get those guys loaded in, get them back out. We will use Westminster as overflow parking for vendors. So that would be the 1 lane closure. And when I'm referring to Westminster, I'm referring to the backside of the storage facility, 1 lane on the right-hand side. So that we have about 6 vehicles, large vehicles that we plan to park on Westminster. Other than that, we'll do what we've done all the previous years. We'll purchase spaces in the parking deck. We've purchased some spaces from Park Tavern and everybody else. I own the party bus animals, so we run our party buses from the host hotels. And then of course we have our Lyft and Uber code as well.
Okay. Will you be closing any lanes or any streets?
The one lane closure would be the right lane on Westminster. Again, which is on you guys are very familiar with Piedmont Park. You know, on the backside of, it's like I think it's called a public storage. That's the backside of Westminster, Piedmont and Westminster. And then it's kind of like the back of Piedmont Park kind of dumps into Westminster, and it shares a street with the public storage. As a matter of fact, the security for Piedmont Park lives back there. Their building lives back there, so that street.
Okay, and that's on the Midtown side of the park, not the
That is correct.
Virginia side of the
That is
park.
correct. Yes.
Okay, and I know that there's a number of residents that live near the park at the meeting tonight. Do you have any questions for Melissa?
What are the hours of these events?
Right on. So the festival itself on 8/31 and 8, they're identical. On 8/31 and 9/1 will be from noon until 9 p.m. We promote 8 p.m. We literally just keep it 9 just for the overflow of people and just giving them the opportunity to get out of the park without us yelling at them. But we kill the sound usually between 8 and 8:30. Now the youth festival, which will live on 10th and Charles Allen, that is from 2 p.m. to 7 p.m. on 9/1 and 8/31.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, is there a motion?
I'll move to support.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second. Vicky Davis.
Thank you, Vicky.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
What do we need to do or add to Pure Heat to get you guys to come?
Well, that's a good question.
Thanks, Melissa. Hey, you said there's a house DJ for over 50. I'll be there.
Okay. Fair. Okay. It's a community festival, you know, and I know it takes place during Black Gay Pride, you know. But I see you guys once a year, or twice a year if I have other events going on. And it's always like this. It's virtual, it's we're on the phone. I may see you at the grocery store and I'm not sure because people look different in person than what they do on the phone. And if anybody here, obviously you guys have my direct, the chairs, the co-chairs have my direct email. We actually have a VIP area. Anybody that's on this call, I'm totally willing to offer a complimentary VIP wristband to anybody here, but I would love just the opportunity to see like my neighbors' faces in person and kind of see what we actually do versus us presenting and you kind of thinking what it is and speculating what it is. I would love to see you there physically just to see what it is and enjoy the festivities just one time.
Thank you, Melissa. That's a very generous offer.
Yes.
If anyone's interested in taking it up on it, just send me an email and I'll get it to Melissa.
Say less.
All right. Okay, we have a motion on the floor to recommend support. It's been made and properly seconded. Are there any other questions? If not, we will take a vote. Okay, all in favor of recommending support, please raise your hand. Okay, has everyone voted that wants to vote? Okay, I see 34 ayes.
Okay. Oh.
If you're opposed to recommending support, please raise your hand. I don't see any hands raised. Everyone's voted by a vote of 34 ayes and 0 nays. The motion carries. Thank you, Melissa. Thanks for being here tonight.
Awesome, thank you. And I'll get that email out, and everybody that's willing to attend, I'll get those, we'll get you wristbands for the backstage access.
Okay.
We're coming.
All right, awesome, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
All right.
See you next
All right.
year.
Awesome.
Next application is the ARIA Gentlemen's Club. This is an LRB application for 2284 Cheshire Bridge Road. It's a change of ownership and the applicant has requested a deferral. Are there any objections to the deferral tonight?
Debbie, I might be the only person from Linridge Martin Manor. I support the deferral so that more people can attend from Linridge Martin Manor.
I agree. And their applicant is the one that actually requested the deferral. And I
Very
know
good.
they have not met with Linridge Martin Manor yet, right?
No, ma'am, not to my knowledge.
Okay.
May I say, just for the record, for anyone who doesn't know, this is the same club as Allure. We just closed Allure with the LRB, and now they're trying to transfer the license to another LLC, is our understanding.
Yep.
So thank you for that. I think we would like to defer and bring more Linridge Martin Manor folks to discuss.
Absolutely. Are there any objections to deferring this application? Okay, then the application is deferred. No objections. Okay. The next application is for review and comment. It's for Le Metro at 675 Ponce de Leon Avenue. Kay, did you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, I would just say that, Hector Santiago has been a successful restaurateur in at Ponce City Market and in Ponce Highland for many years. I am not aware of any complaints we've ever had with any of his businesses. So I would recommend that we support whatever decision is it NPU-M makes with regard to this application.
I think it's M. I know this goes to 4 NPUs.
Yeah.
Does anyone have any comments, any additional comments that we could provide to NPU-M? This is in Ponce City Market.
I second it, however.
Okay. Okay, it's not something that we need to take a vote on. I will send a note to NPU-M saying that we will support their decision. All right, the next application, so we've done the both BZA applications. Pages are out of order. The next, okay. The next items on the agenda are 2 pieces of legislation. One is Z-2443, an ordinance by council members, there are a number of them, to amend the zoning ordinance, chapter 36, Beltline overlay and district regulations, to prohibit data centers in the Beltline overlay. Does anyone have any comments that they would like to make regarding this application? Or Doug, is there anything that you could provide us that would shed some light on the application?
No, that's a pretty good summary.
I don't know the history of what generated the interest in prohibiting data centers in the Beltline, but that seems to make sense. Kay?
I would just say that a big part of the reason is that data centers are typically big boxes without windows, without any way of interacting with the outside world. That's what they are. They're just big server farms that take a lot of energy. But with the Beltline being, sort of our prime waterfront real estate, it seems like a very poor use to put something like a big brick box on the Beltline when we could have all kinds of uses that the community can interact with. There's no way to interact with a data center. In fact, typically they have big fences and razor wire and armed guards. So that's really not what we're looking for, I don't think, along the Beltline. Certainly not what I would be looking for.
Me neither. Anyone else have any comments? Is there a motion? Someone will make a
We
motion.
recommend it. Recommend not approval.
Not approval of the ordinance?
No, approval of the ordinance against against the centers. We support the ordinance.
I'll second that.
Okay, so the
So
first
long line of people who want to second that.
motion moved by Jack and a second by Kay. Those are the two voices that I heard. Okay, is there any more discussion on the motion or the ordinance? Oh, Sandy, I see your hand raised. And your hand went down. Okay. If we're ready to vote, all those in favor of recommending approval of this or supporting this ordinance, this is Z2443. If you're following along in the agenda, please raise your hands. Please raise your hands by using the reactions icon under the icon under the reactions tab. Oh, Lordy. Okay, there's one person that's clapping. Check your icon. There we go. Okay, has everyone voted that wants to vote? I think we're almost there. Okay, 37 ayes. I'm going to clear the feedback. And is there anyone that's opposed to recommending support of this application? Stephanie, you're voting to oppose the application? Oops. Okay. I just want to make sure that everyone's votes being reported correctly. Okay, I don't see any hands raised. So by a vote of 37 ayes and 0 nays, the motion carries. The last item for consideration tonight is Z2444. This is an ordinance by multiple council members to amend the Atlanta zoning ordinance to create a definition of data center by amending chapter 29 and by amending the regulations of various districts to prohibit data centers within a half mile of high capacity transit stops and for other purposes. Doug, anything else you can offer?
Yeah, thanks, Debbie. The only thing I would say is that if you review the ordinance, it applies to numerous zoning districts. And in some cases, there's outright prohibitions. And sometimes in the same district, depending on the circumstances, there's data centers are allowed to buy special use permits. So if you review that ordinance, you'll see that there are different I guess, tiers of review is the best way to put it, for the different zoning categories.
Okay, so in some cases, the data centers can be located in districts with a special use permit.
Yes,
Okay,
and underneath certain circumstances.
no certain circumstance. Okay. Are there any comments or questions regarding this application?
I was curious to know how we define high capacity transit stop, because again, I'm thinking maybe a data center generates its own traffic. So it's almost like you don't want to build it, but then something becomes a high traffic stop. So how is that defined?
High capacity transit centers are defined in the city zoning code, and I can quickly look that up if you give me a minute, but there's a city definition for that.
Yeah,
So
it's just a curiosity. I mean, I'm not going to vote based on that, but I would like to know.
Sure.
That would be like a MARTA stop, wouldn't it?
It would include MARTA stops, but there is a I don't know if you call it more generic definition, but a more general definition.
Okay, while Doug's looking that up, does anyone else have any comments they'd like to make or questions? Claire Pesh? I see your hand raised. Claire?
This is George Petch, Claire's Petch, husband. One comment on the data centers. All that was mentioned earlier is accurate in terms of their high energy use. There was a recent article in NPR about ill effects from the extreme noise they generate. And if you're not considering that, you're maybe missing out on a very serious aspect of their how they impact neighborhoods.
Good feedback.
Thank you.
Doug, any luck in finding them?
Not yet, but let me, I'll keep looking.
Okay, while you're looking, does someone want to make a motion?
I'll move to support the legislation.
I second.
Okay. Motion was made by Kay Stevenson and seconded by Jack White. I want to give Doug enough time to find the answer to the question.
Okay, I mean, we can move on. I was more curious.
You're okay with that? Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Thank you. We'll get it sooner or later. If there are no other questions or comments, a motion's been made, properly seconded to support Z 2444. All those in favor, please raise your hand. Using the icon under the reactions tab. Okay, I see one X. I don't know if that's someone that's opposed. I'm going to call opposed next after we. Okay. There are 29 ayes. Okay. I've lowered everyone's hands. If you're opposed to supporting this legislation, please raise your hand. Sharon Cullen, I see your hand raised. I just want to make sure that you're voting to oppose. Okay. I don't see any other hands raised. That's one nay. By a vote of 29 ayes and one nay, the motion carries. And we're still looking for the definition. Okay, that brings us to the end of our voting matters. The next item on the agenda is the presentation by Atlanta Beltline Inc. on the Beltline SubArea 6 master plan.
Hi, Debbie. This is Lynette Reed. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Lynette, will you be doing the presentation?
I will, along with Andrew Core, who was the consultant we selected to help us update the plan. And I also have Forrest Rose with us. He's the senior planner that we brought on recently, and I'm really excited to have him on the team. My name is Lynette Reed, and am I okay to jump in, Debbie, and just get started?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So my name is Lynette Reed. I am the Vice President of Planning, Engagement, and Art at the Atlanta Beltline. I've been in my capacity about 6 months. I was the project manager for this SubArea 6 master plan, and I've been with the organization about 13 years now. So let me start by saying this. I'm just going to dive in. Thank you to everyone who's given comments on the latest draft of the SubArea 6 plan. We've received all of your emails and have been able to respond to most of them. So if we haven't responded to you yet, we'll make sure we do. But I wanted to start off by saying that first and foremost, tonight there is no vote. This is information. We went to the NPU-F joint meeting like 2 or 3 weeks ago, and NPU-E about a week and a half or so ago. And so coming here tonight just to kind of keep talking through the plan. I wanted everyone also to know in our responses to some of your emails about one of the concerns and one of the recommendations in particular, that we explained that we would be extending the comment period so that we give ample time for more than enough feedback, but more importantly, that we will be revisiting those recommendations. So thank you for your feedback, and we will be going back to revisit those recommendations, and we'll be coming back to you probably in late August sometimes. So I wanted to start off by saying that. Next slide, please. So just to orient everybody, the SubArea, we refer to them as SubAreas, but as many of you are already familiar, this really functions like a neighborhood plan. Many of the neighborhoods in SubArea 6 have their version of a neighborhood. They have neighborhood plans, and this is what the SubArea plan is as well. These are the neighborhoods that make up SubArea 6. It's bounded by Ponce de Leon on its southern side, and its northern boundary is I-85, and it's roughly a half mile on either side. That's kind of our planning geography. So for those who aren't familiar with the master plan or may not be as acquainted with neighborhood plans, they really function as policy tools to help guide future growth and development for, livable mixed-use communities. In the instance of the Beltline, the objective has always been for transit-supportive developments to develop and identify density at such time as we go after transit funding to have the densities and the ridership to support transit. So I wanted to make sure I kind of underscore that. But these are companion pieces to the CDP and to the comprehensive development plan. I want to say that when land use decisions are being made, again, these are policy recommendations. There's no proactive rezoning as a part of these plans in what we're doing. We make recommendations. There's no amendments to the CDP future land use as a part of this. Again, these are intended to serve as a guide. Ultimately, what makes the decisions about approved zoning is your CDP, your comprehensive development plan, your future land use plan, and the underlying zoning. And the city does look at also, in addition, what do some of the neighborhood plans say? But the legal instruments to determine approval is the CDP and the zoning district. So I just wanted to say that. So that's sub-area 6. So why are we updating sub-area 6, right? So all of these plans were done, most of the plans were done maybe 12 years ago, before there was an official Beltline. And so every 5 to 8 years, these should be updated realistically. And so we've been going through all of the sub areas, updating these various plans for the last 3 years. And so the several that are left to be done, we're in the midst of sub-area 6 now, is sub-area 7 and 8. But to date, we have done updates on all of the other sub areas as listed. Next slide. So how did we get here, right? And so normally plans wrap a little faster than this. This has gone a little longer than I anticipated as well. And we've just had some major transitions in our staff that kind of impacted the timing and capacity. And so I'll start by saying that. But it did start in spring of 2022. We started with a kickoff as a part of this master plan update and most of the other updates as well. We also had a stakeholder committee, and the stakeholder committee, we invite NPU chairs, neighborhood presidents, the school system. We invite large property owners because we want to make sure it's a well-rounded conversation. So we have a stakeholder committee made up of the people I just mentioned a moment ago. We also have a technical advisory committee made of city staff and Atlanta Beltline and various partners that we invite to participate to weigh in as well. So that kicked off in the spring of 2022. Then we did a survey out to the community via platform to get additional feedback, and people dropped points at intersections and gave feedback. And overall, what we heard in large part was safety and mobility and how people get around, and cyclists, et cetera, was really a major concern at that time is what we heard. And then we did can't remember how many days it was. It was about 2.5, maybe 3 weeks at Ansley Mall. We took one of their vacant spaces and we set up a pop-up shop there. And most of it was staff. There were times where staff attended and had designated time to interact with the community. And then we also had time when the community could come in on their own, kind of as a self-guided tour and give feedback. And then we had the findings to the workshop in summer of last year, summer of 22, and then we ended in the fall of 2022. And we spent several months working on the edits and the draft plan. And that's when many of you saw my face last year at your neighborhood meetings to talk about the draft plan. And so the draft plan was presented last summer. And we did our roadshow with the neighborhoods and shared recommendations, and then left the plan out for comment for several months. And then we spent the last couple of months working on the most recent draft, which many of you have gave comment to. So just want to underscore to the people here tonight, spending their time with us on a Wednesday night, that we have received our comments and we will be giving them careful consideration, and we'll be circling back with you in the next month or so. So next slide. So again, just reiterating, what does this plan do? Again, it's intended to serve as a guide for future growth and development. It's also, for transit supported development along the Beltline. And that's why in a lot of places we've made those recommendations around density as well. And we at the same time, we recognize that density has to be right in scale and size. And so in the narrative of the plan, what you'll notice is that in a lot of places, we recommended that density is nestled against the Beltline and tiers down specifically to the aligning or to the adjacent single family, so that there's proper scaling down to the neighborhoods. And so that was something that was mentioned in the narrative. And so just wanted to underscore that. Next slide. I mentioned that a moment ago. This is kind of the highlights. And Debbie, I do want to say that we pared this down just a bit so that it's a little bit more focused on NPU-F. But again, everything, the totality of the recommendations are in the draft plan, but the critical ones we'll be addressing tonight.
Okay.
And so, so what changed? Some kind of, again, a high level, what changed from the draft that was presented last summer? So originally at Amsterdam Walk, we were recommending high density mixed use, and that was a comment that came out through the draft that people responded to about the density, and we did make that shift of medium density. We still kept the height because we felt like we could still have some conversation around that, and obviously we heard your comments as well, so now we have to revisit that. And then we made some changes at Midtown Place, and that was in part of some comments that we got from Courtney's group at NPU-E. There were changes to minor changes to mobility projects. We really wanted to make sure that this plan underscored projects that were either in the pipeline of the city or projects that we knew were important to the community. When you are doing these type of plans, one way to help get funding down the road for specific mobility projects is to ensure that that project is recommended in a codified or adopted plan that helps the momentum for the city to then take that to either get additional funding or grants. There was some modifications to the open space, and there was a lot of questions in the last plan about the open space that the city of APS Schools owns across from the former Inman Middle School, and how could that be activated, et cetera. And after meeting with the city, or APS rather, we understood that there were no immediate plans for that. And so to level set and manage expectation, we removed that as open space recommendation. And then just as any document, every now and then you want to make sure you're doing quality control and getting rid of the typos, et cetera. And so those were kind of the overall changes from the last plan. But again, I can't underscore enough and we do understand that once it's in a plan, it becomes, someone can latch onto it and it becomes the North Star. But I do want to underscore that in these plans, that the reason why we don't do comprehensive development plan, map amendments, or proactive rezonings in these recommendations, because we do know that it is in the zoning process where the public gets to work with whomever to really flesh out the specifics of a case. And a lot of times in land use or future land use planning, you don't have specific points of reference. Now, is this a nuance? Yes, because there's a specific case, right? So that's different. And so we just appreciate everyone's feedback on that. But again, that process to sort that out is the one that you guys have been involved in, obviously with the city related to projects in the area. Next slide. And so here are the draft land use recommendations, and someone in an email, and I want to mention that, said, is it final? It's not final. It's very much draft. We have not entered city legislative process. We've held off on that to give us more time to get feedback. And even once it enters the city's legislative process, and by that, I mean it's formally before you for a vote, there is still time even in that to give feedback. These are considered draft until it's adopted officially by city council. So let me say that. What's before you are some of the areas where recommendations were made for future land use. And I will say that some of this is new recommendations. Some of them is to reflect what's already occurred in a particular area. And that's kind of the gist of that. And so again, just want to underscore a couple of, in particular, I talked about Amsterdam Walk, that we're extending the comment period. We'll be revisiting that recommendation and come back to you and find out where there's alignment or where there's compromise. We don't know. We'll see that in a couple of weeks when we come back. We want to make sure we get as much feedback as possible. The other one was at I don't want to steal your thunder, Andrew, but I do want to say that at Kroger, we know that Piedmont Heights just did their plan as well. And when we met a couple of weeks ago, there was also a note about the land use around Kroger and how it aligned with the single family over there. So just want to kind of go ahead and address that off the bat. and that those are two in particular that we'll be revisiting. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Andrew Core to walk us through the remainder of the plan, and then we'll take some questions.
Great. Thank you, Lynette. So next slide, Forrest. All right. So we just want to kind of do a bit of a deeper dive on a couple of the recommendations as it relates to the land use. So the first screen you see here on the left is at that Piedmont and Monroe intersection, what we all know as Ansley Mall and Ansley Square. For Ansley Mall, we have identified that to shift from a mixed use medium density / high density to simply mixed use medium density, 5 to 9 stories. So we've shifted that in a response to listening to the community and changes since 2011. The square, really shifting that to low density, and that's really also driven by the restrictions on the site. It's a very restrictive site. It's hard to redevelop that site, and so what you have there today is a lot of kind of the by all accounts, largely what you can get there in the future too, just because of
the Georgia Power easement and the creek and
the Georgia
offsets.
Power
Yeah.
easement and the Clear Creek are kind of really restrict that site. And of course, as everyone knows, the Piedmont Park extension that's happened since the 2011 plan. So we identified that to open space as well. So on the Monroe Kroger site, as Lynette mentioned, we're still looking to adjust that recommendation and working through that. We've identified that to being mixed use medium density to 5 to 9 stories. It's a very unique site. Number one, there's a lot of topography change adjacent to the Beltline, and to the north of it, especially near Montgomery Ferry, all those houses along Montgomery Ferry, you have single family residential. So we're working to find a way to massage that recommendation to make sure it's appropriate, future development's appropriate there. And we've noted that too, that we're looking at those land use recommendations pursuant to the public comment. And we're very sensitive to that transitional height plane as you step down to single family residential. So next slide. So Amsterdam Walk. So Lynette already addressed that, but we'll just again address it. Amsterdam Walk is identified in kind of has two portions, A and B, as you see on the screen. The Beltline adjacent portion is what we've identified as the height of 10 stories. The neighborhood adjacent ones, we've kept it at mixed use medium density, referenced or recommended mixed use medium density from 5 to 9 stories. But again, I'll reiterate what Lynette said. We are taking all that, reevaluating that based on the feedback we've received and looking to kind of how to address the adjacent land use recommendations. The other one is Dutch Valley, where the previous Orpheus Brewing was. Historically, it was industrial, and we've recommended mixed use medium density there. And the surrounding parcels, it was low density commercial, and we felt a better use for kind of again mixed use medium density than 5 to 9 stories in that space in there. Another space that has a lot of topography change and in there as well. So again, those are the core ones as it relates to NPU-F. So we go to the next slide. So mobility. A lot of the comments you see here on mobility, these bullet points, are really kind of what the plan is still committed to, what the Beltline is still committed to. And we want to, in this area, especially in SubArea 6, is very active in terms of projects. And so we want to make sure the plan is accurately documenting that. As you can imagine, when we began 2022, things were still in the planning stages. Now they're under construction. So it's a very dynamic process. One being, there is continuing to plan for future Beltline transit. That's still ongoing. That is still the plan. So that's still very much a principle. There is still the commitment to mitigate traffic impacts of Beltline redevelopment. And that's really thinking about safety, alternative transportation options, and improved mobility. So that's always something we want to hear. We've heard that a lot from the community, especially about safety along many of the roadways, and making sure we address that and think about that. We want to continue to emphasize bicycle and pedestrian connectivity as we expand the infrastructure. Piedmont and Monroe are really signature streets in sub-area 6. Councilmember Juan mentioned the discussion about Monroe, and there we also make recommendations in the plan for Piedmont to consider alternatives to improve Piedmont long term and think about all users, but taking a step back and making sure that those roadways really truly represent the community. And then, of course, as the Beltline comes online, especially in this segment, we're seeing it as we speak, making sure we're improving that last mile connectivity to the Beltline corridor itself, improving those gaps and making sure that the surrounding neighborhoods can safely access the corridor. So keep in mind that there's a lot of completed and underway projects going on. We have the Ponce Streetscape that's been long in the planning stages, but is now underway between Freedom Parkway and Boulevard. We have the trail between Westminster Drive and to Mason Street. And then, as we mentioned earlier this evening already, the 10th and Monroe intersection improvement is ongoing. So a lot of activity, which is a great sign too. Parks and open space. So there were very few open space recommendations. A couple of carryovers. One was Clear Creek to create make that a public amenity. The section between Piedmont Park and the Ansley Golf Club, driving club, the golf course there. It's really not a great section of the creek. It's been channelized, hasn't historically not been maintained, kind of sits between multiple property owners. So that was something that coming from the 2011 plan that we carried forward. I think it is very exciting to see since the inception of the plan when we began engaging stakeholders. CLIG and the owners of Ansley Mall have actually begun building out the new bicycle pedestrian connection. It's not open yet, but it has been installed. So they're working towards that. So we're already seeing improvements in that space, which is really exciting. There is also a recommendation in the plan for restoring the bridge along Brook Ridge Drive in Orem Park. That was a carryover, a legacy carryover from a previous plan. And one of the things that was already asked about this evening of the Botanical Garden is to reflect that expansion. Again, we still don't know a whole lot, but we know they are moving forward sometime in the future with expansion. And so to document that as it, because it is directly adjacent to the Beltline. So moving forward, as Lynette mentioned, we've had a series of these meetings. We're here this evening on July 2nd. We've already met with NPU-E, and the goal is to come back in September. That's the tentative goal for votes. There's a couple of obviously issues we still want to work through in the land use recommendations. The goal then would be in the fall to go to the Community Development and Human Services public hearing, and ultimately for City Council for final adoption. As Lynette mentioned, we've kept the June draft document is still available to review online. And there's a lot of narrative that we put in there because there is a lot of nuance, especially with the land use recommendations. So we've really taken care to, and we'll continue to work on that to make sure there's a lot of nuance in the narrative because that's very key. In addition to the graphics that you've seen this evening. So that's the address for the document. So, and I think that's the last slide, Forrest, or maybe one more. Oh, and yes, of course, this is our information. I'm Andrew. Carson, who is a colleague of mine, is on the call as well. And you've heard from Lynette and Forrest is here as well this evening. So I think Lynette, we'll turn that back over to Debbie. Is that correct?
Yes.
So would now be the time to open up the floor for questions?
Absolutely.
Okay. If you have a question for Lynette or Andrew or anyone from the pond team that's here tonight, please raise your hand. I will take you in order of when the hands are raised. And the first hand that I see is for Charlie Cafton. Charlie.
Debbie, and thanks to the Beltline team for the presentation. And I'm glad to hear that you guys have received a lot of feedback on, particularly on the Amsterdam Walk issue, and that you are seriously looking at it to revise the draft. It's very curious to me that all the other sections that you mentioned, Ansley Mall, and there was one other, they're all at 5 to 9 stories. There seems to be only one exception, Amsterdam Walk, which is 10 plus stories. And this is very curious, especially when you compare Ansley Mall and Amsterdam Walk. Ansley Mall has Piedmont Avenue, Monroe Drive, lots of ingress and egress points. Amsterdam Walk is a little cul-de-sac. It only has one. So it kind of defies logic just on that level. But then, of course, it's a very serious, drastic change from the 2011 master plan, which envisioned 1 to 4 stories and 5 to 9 stories, instead of the much higher buildings that you've put in here, when nothing has changed at Amsterdam Walk. It's the same cul-de-sac, it's the same landlocked situation. And in fact, in the 2011 plan, that plan was based on Beltline light rail already being in place to support that level of development. And we know that the light rail is not yet available. And if you look at page 44 of the executive summary of the 2011 plan, where it mentions the proposed density near transit stops, it talks about Amsterdam Walk having 347 apartments as the kind of density that it could support. And that is with transit stops. So again, since there's no transit, nothing has really changed at Amsterdam Walk. It really makes no sense that the buildings be higher than they were proposed in 2011. And especially since Ansley Mall and other locations are still at 5 to 9. So my question is Amsterdam Walk the only exception here, or are there other exceptions?
Thank you, Charles, for your question. And so there were other places where 10 plus stories closer to ponds. I definitely follow your logic. I think when we were making this recommendation, we were looking at topography. We were looking at adjacent to the park. We were looking at with the understanding that obviously with some level of development that would occur here, there would have to be some other points of access, right? You couldn't do all that off a one-way street. So that was kind of our high level logic in that. So I appreciate your feedback, and this is what we're here is to listen and hear you out and take it back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Charles.
Paulo Palumbo.
Yes, thank you. First of all, again, I second what Charles said about the, I was glad to hear that you're listening to feedback and take them into account. My question is about timing of revision of the feedback. So you said that the goal is to come back here in September for a vote.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens between now and then?
That's a great question. So what we'll intend, our plan is to our goal is to leave the plan out for comment, right? Because we want to make sure that this is an opportunity for everybody to comment. Obviously, this particular area in Amsterdam is critically important, and there's other elements of the plan we want to make sure that everybody gets a chance to weigh in on. So our next step is to let this stay out through August, right? And then along the way, we'll start making edits. And when we're ready to say, hey, NPU-F, this is what we like you to react to, we'll get that to Debbie for her to see it. And we'll come to your land use committee properly to have you guys look at it before it comes before you as a vote. Because I think NPU-F has a land use committee, correct? Or
yes,
no?
we do.
Yes. Okay. So we'll follow that sequence. And that's why it's listed as tentative. If we need to adjust and pivot, we will.
Thank you. So, I mean, maybe just reiterating what you said, it would be good if we get even updates also or some form of communication if you make changes to the draft, because again, I'm not in the habit of checking the draft every week. So if something has changed, it would be nice if if you tell Debbie, let us know, that'll be great.
Right. So that's actually a great point. We're gonna leave the version up there so we don't get into version control issues in terms of what version people are looking at. The June document will stay out there live. When changes have actually been made, we'll produce a new document. So you don't have to keep checking for it. We'll let Debbie know that, hey, we've received all the comments. This is our evaluation, and here's the updated draft for the team, for the community to react to.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie Coffin?
Okay,
Stephanie?
can everybody hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I would just like to do a little reality check with everybody who's on this call. And that is the heat has been pretty unbearable this year. Next year, because of climate change, it's going to be worse. And the year after, it'll probably be worse because that's what is happening with climate change. Now, the picture on your screen shows a wide swath of trees that are no longer there because of the Georgia Power overhead wires. And so that section of the Beltline is very uncomfortable to ride through, to walk through, etc. And that is only one of two areas that we have lost incredible tree canopy recently. And the other area is, of course, the trees that were taken down on the eastern side of Piedmont Park. That was like the first massive tree removal that I've seen on the Beltline that I know of. So we have lost incredible amount of trees in this particular area. Now, what I would like to do just very quickly is relate this to Amsterdam Walk. Amsterdam Walk has a full canopy on three sides. And we really need to consider about how we can keep that canopy for pollution, for shade, and for stormwater. And that is those areas of trees that exist in our city are going to become the primary focus of everyone now, given climate change. So given that, I just would like to have a greater consideration of the role of trees and what we're facing now. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Stephanie. I appreciate the comment. And we will take that in consideration. I will say, though, that as it relates to, I'll speak to the Beltline side first. We are part, well, let me say this, there's no way to successfully replace a mature tree. So let me say that. But I will say in instances where we've had to remove trees for a variety of different reasons, we have a relationship with Trees Atlanta, and we work really hard to meet our recompense or exceed it. So I'll say that. But yes, I totally hear what you're saying. Now, as it relates to specific zoning cases, those are great points that are brought up specifically to the Office of Zoning and Development, because that team oversees not only the zoning, obviously the zoning district, but also the tree canopy and the arbors and tree ordinance, et cetera. So that group is definitely the right group as well to share that information with.
Okay, you ready for the next question? Justin Martirana?
Hey there. So can the planner speak to the differences between density from a technical standpoint and building height, and how those things relate to each other or don't relate to each other? How
That's a great question. And so I think that's where our original plan, there was confusion in how it was relayed. Technically, if I can use it this way, if I had to explain it to my son, I would say density speaks to the concentration of development on the site, how much of it is. that's the density. And that's where you get your future land use that says it's mixed use or it's medium or it's high density. It speaks to the concentration of the building envelope and what happens on the site. And the height, though, is not determined by future land use. The height is determined by the zoning district, which says based off of a number of different things, your FAR, the underlying zoning, that determines the height. There are some zoning categories where there's no height limits, and in others there are. So that's that differentiation. I hope that makes sense. And Andrew, if you have a better way of explaining it, by all means, jump in as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of times when we think about density, there's a calculation in our head, right? Like how many units per acre, right? That's how most people think about density, especially when it comes to, often comes with, you know, mixed use and things like that. And so there is a misnomer that the higher you go, the more dense you are, which is not necessarily the case. And that's why it gets tricky. As an example, I can have a row of like townhomes, right? Very small property, and it can be on a small acre, and it can be a huge unit per acre, very high, and it's very dense. But well, it's only 2 stories, and it's very moderately sized. Whereas I can have a 8-story apartment building with a surface lot, and actually be very low density because you have a lot and you have very little land actually fully being developed for use. And so, what we sometimes do, and it's what the cards we've been dealt with, but that's kind of how typically people think about it. And so when you try to boil it down to one number, it is very difficult. So that's why we kind of try to separate it. So like Lynette said, density is a concentration of what's happening on the site itself. You can have everything 1 story be very dense because the entire site's developed. And it would be very different than the height and how that would relate. And so that's why we try to distinguish both within our communication and kind of the narrative and the content, because they are different, but they are related to each other.
So just to summarize, so density and height are not necessarily mutually exclusive.
Yes, they're related, but they're not always moving in the same direction, or there's a correlation, not a causality. Maybe that's not the right way to say it. But yes, you're correct. They're related to one another, but they don't always operate the same direction, and so they are somewhat independent.
Or a tall building could still produce low or medium density.
100%.
Gotcha.
That's why it's important to have the height, clarifying the heights, because that's otherwise it gets really, it's very important to have that additional language in there to clarify the heights. Otherwise, it makes things more confusing.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks, Justin. Louis Meyer.
Good evening. Thank you very much for this presentation. I've been hearing a lot that very popular parts of the Beltline, particularly this section in Zone 6, during peak use has become not impassable, very crowded. With the interference with people trying to use as a cycling trail and as recreational, just pedestrian use. Do you have any idea? And this is not something obviously that you be held to, because there's funding vagaries and one thing and another. Do you know what the build out schedule is for separating wheels from the heels, as people have been saying? Particularly since Monroe was in production now, apparently, ground is getting ready to turn dirt, and they've decided no bicycle lanes on Monroe because the Beltline is supposed to have these miracle instant wheel lanes. And it looks like that Monroe will be, no bicycle lanes long before there's any kind of separated bicycle path on the Beltline. Again, do you have any idea what when the additional trailing will be put in? And then in relation to that, have you heard from MARTA about when they might be putting in, I think current technology is EBRT, which is their preference. Putting in some dedicated transit to make developments like Amsterdam Walk even possible.
That's a great question, Louis. So, I'm Gen X, so I may forget half of the question. I'm getting older, so I may have to go back to. So the first part of it was about what's happening on the trail. So, and I think that was mentioned in someone's, I may be confusing meetings, but so there's no plan to create a separate medium, if you will, for bicycle versus vehicles. I mean, bicycles versus pedestrians. So let me say this. Let me say that. I will say though that the objective in completing some of the more of the segments of the Beltline is that you would disperse some of that activity throughout. Now, there's no getting around that there are certain places are just hotspots. People want to go to Pont City Market or whatever your favorite place may be, and those areas still remain to be high volume areas. I will say we are very aware of that, and there are some things that we are working on in the near future to kind of bring a little bit more etiquette, if you will, and safety out there. So stay tuned for that, Louis, because that is something that we're aware of too, right? You want people to be able to enjoy it in a safe manner. And there are segments that are very crowded. We acknowledge that, right? And so the objective in doing these segments incrementally as we get funding, whether philanthropic or grants, is to help disperse some of that. But in the meantime, it is something that we're working on. So let me say that. As it relates to transit, obviously, we're still very much that was the genesis of this whole project, was that it would be a transit oriented development. And so we're still at the table with MARTA and our city partners around this. We know that the city still has plans to expand. There's plans to expand the downtown streetcar up to Pond City Market. We know there is some differing opinions in the community about that. They're at about 30% design, and the 60% design should be starting, I don't know, in the next couple of months, and they'll come out with the public to do engagement around that. But we haven't, as you know, an entity and working with our partners, haven't wavered from transit. And so I'd say, Louis, as more information is made available, that will be a public process as well.
So just to be a little bit more clear, you said that there's no plan currently, not even a whiff of initial construction for separating the individual transportation, bicycles, scooters, stuff from pedestrians?
No, the corridor is the corridor. We have no plans on separating those two. And so it's always been the plan that they could coexist, but we understand even in that coexisting, it's the numbers on certain days, it becomes problematic. But yes, to answer your question directly, there's no plans to have a separate path for for cyclists and a separate one for e-vehicles. You know, if you remember a couple of years ago, there was I don't know if it was an ordinance, but a city policy or around the number of electric bike users or providers in the area. We've done everything to geofence, which would limit the speed when you get in certain areas. But now you have, and that's controlled if it's attached to a company, but now you also have folks who have private e-vehicle transportations. And so it's hard to monitor that. So yeah, I wish there was one definite answer to that, Mr. Meyer, but there's no plans to separate it. But I will tell you that we're working on identifying ways to mitigate what's happening out there.
So the design plans currently do not match the original concept drawings during the Beltline proposal stages back 20, 30 years ago? Originally there was a pedestrian path basically for, local, people walking a linear park. people using it as bicycle transit. And then at that time, it was light rail. And there was it was a full use of the 100-foot old railroad right-of-way to separate those three modes of transit. Are you saying now that has been abandoned?
So I'll say this, since I've been at the Beltline, it's been one corridor for a multi-use trail to accommodate a lot of different modes. And then again, on the sides of either transit at some point. So yes, transit at some point down the road, or transit along either side, depending on where you are along the corridor. But the corridor, the trail has always been the multi-use trail. And that's been since I've been there. I haven't heard of anything of separating paths for different modes other than the transit.
Okay, are we ready for the next question? Diana, your hand is up next.
It's Padron, and I have a sort of well, two issues, but they're related. One, when I look at the parcels or the properties that we have discussed tonight, they are currently 1 or 2 stories of construction, and like the Kroger is mostly parking lot, et cetera, et cetera. And to take all those properties to possibly up to 9 stories, where's all that traffic going to go is my question. I mean, that sounds certainly more reasonable than 10, 14, or 17 stories, but I mean, it's still, what, 5 times what we have in terms of potential traffic. So that's one point I wanted to raise, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I may well be. But the gentleman that spoke a little bit ago was saying, Piedmont and Monroe will be updated to meet the neighborhood needs or something of that nature. And I wondered what examples of that updating might be, like 4 or 6 lanes, or I mean, who knows? I'm just like, some examples of what that could be. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. Andrew, do you want to talk through the Piedmont recommendations? Because that's a recommendation on how to mitigate or slow down more of a traffic calming. But Andrew, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, so the Great Street principle concept is really about the fact that the land use and the surrounding context and the roadway are interrelated, right? And so and especially on streets like Piedmont and Monroe, which are very well-known streets, heavily used streets, heavily associated with these neighborhoods, that they should have, they should look really nice, they should connect really well, they should represent the community well in whatever shape that looks like, right? And that goes from the land use patterns to the connectivity, to the visibility, to the gateways along the corridor. So that's really where the Great Street principle concept comes from. Currently, so there is Atlanta doesn't expand roadway. I mean, they don't expand and add traffic lanes. The city doesn't. It's the policy generally. There is no room to expand Piedmont. It's a 4-lane cross section right now, 2 travel lanes in either direction, without any until you get further south, where it becomes one way.
I'm well aware of its configuration. I'm just curious what you are thinking about. Right.
Well, that's where I was going. So the idea, one of the recommendations is to look at improving kind of the safety and the high speeds along Piedmont. That may include bicycle lanes, looking at the option, making it a 3-lane cross section to make dedicated left turns to make it safer. That will also slow traffic down, but also improve safety from people turning off and on into kind of adjacent side streets or businesses. So that was really kind of the core of it. And then, of course, everything else the Beltline kind of promotes in terms of public art, great green space, better connectivity is also part of that. So it was very high level. And the whole idea was to simply say, there's been a lot of it. The genesis of this, Dana, was that there's a lot of happening on Monroe, but Piedmont is equally very, operates in the same ways like Monroe, right? It's a very busy street. There's a lot of things going on. And so, making sure that Piedmont is not forgotten in that space.
See, so again, I mean, here they are both over capacity as best I can tell. So if any traffic is added, be it from 5 or 9 stories in any of these locations that you all discussed tonight, that's just more we've got to deal with. Just saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next question comes from Jack White.
Thanks, Debbie. Andrew and Lynette, thanks for the presentation. I'd like to just call your attention to the strip of what is informally called Orme Creek, which runs westward from under Monroe and then intersects with Clear Creek at the entrance where it meets at about 200 yards at the end of Westminster. It's covered with kudzu, and it's a disaster, and it's been that way for years. It's a habitat disaster. It's going to get a little complicated because the number of roads into that area are going to expand from 1 to 2, presumably. So there may be some changes in there. But honestly, that kudzu is not that hard to remove. It's the habitat replaced. It's got good sunlight. So to my knowledge, there's only sewer lines on one side of the creek, the south side, the north side, behind the existing businesses on Westminster. So I think you could, without digging down and tearing into lines, you could really do a rehab on the habitat part of that. It would be much more aesthetic. It would fit in with the great street principle you just enunciated. I'll shoot you an email tomorrow, both of you, but I wanted to just call your attention to that. And it wouldn't cost much, is my guess, relative to some of the other things. You would not have to move the stream or move the toe or the boundaries. At most, you might have to put a little bit of work on the and a little geotextile down on the toe. Anyway, thanks for taking a look at it. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Jack.
Thank you, Jack.
And the last hand that's raised is Jacinta O'Sullivan.
Thank you, Debbie. Thank you guys for your presentation. I have a question for you. When you were presenting there, you were talking about the Kroger and the single family homes. I live on Amsterdam Walk and we are single family homes. I heard nothing in your presentation about the transitioning of the height from that actual houses that are on Amsterdam Walk in your Amsterdam Walk presentation. There are 18 houses there's 18 on one side, there is some more on the other side. And with your recommendations, there's nothing about transitioning into those single family homes. And why is that?
So, hi, Ms. Jacinta. Nice to meet you. I actually did mention that, that the recommendation was to keep the density nestled along the Beltline, stepping down and tearing down from that. So lowering height down as you got to the single family. And that's also, or the adjacent, development and transitional height, the residential development. And that's also in the narrative. But I'll
in the 2011 one, it specifically says that for that area. But in your draft that you've put out, and I know you said you're addressing it, and I appreciate that very much, but that needs to be very specific, because there are single family homes in there. And I know you're not involved with the Portman project, but the Portman project was not in any shape or form. They wanted to put 9 stories, 10 stories up beside the single family homes. And I think, you did there tonight say that it was very important for the Kroger development that you transition. So I think it's equally as important for the Amsterdam Walk area as well.
No, agreed. And we did mention that, so we'll make sure that that's underscored in it's in the draft document as well, but we'll make sure that we underscore that the transitions are important. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you,
Yes,
Debbie.
ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Lynette, who should the comments be addressed to?
Forrest is our senior planner. So If they can get them to Forrest, that would be great. And I will let you know, so I sent the link in the chat, as well as in this presentation. I will say, it just dawned on me too. I know that, so download it, save it. We are gonna go live with a new website soon, but so go with what you have, and then if something shifts, we'll send you the new link as well, but the document remains the same in terms of what version you're looking at. So I just wanted to mention that if you go to beltline.org in the next week, it may be a very different website. So we'll make sure that we also share where it lives on the new website as well, once that's live.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
All righty. I don't see any other hands raised. Lynette and
Okay.
Andrew and Forrest, I know you're out there. Thank you for coming tonight. Appreciate the time that you took.
Thank you, Debbie and NPU-F for all the great comments. We've been taking notes behind the scenes, so this is really helpful. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, everyone.
All right,
Thank
have
you.
a great one.
Thank you. Okay, we only have a couple more things on the agenda, and Doug, do you have a planner's report?
Yes, I do. Happy to share that with you. Good evening, everybody. Once again, my name is Doug Young. I'm the NPU-F planner assigned to the NPU from the Department of City Planning. My regular duties at the City of Atlanta include being the director of the Office of Design, which includes the City of Atlanta's historic preservation, planning, and public space teams. We do have a couple of short announcements today, and as usual, we'll put a link in the chat. We can get all this and follow links to all the programs and projects if you want to sign up or get more information. First off, I just wanted to remind folks we're continuing our celebration of the NPU's 50th anniversary, and we're in what's called the Love Thy Neighbor phase. It's going to go on for the next couple of months, and we are promoting and celebrating neighborhood pride. In August in particular, the Department of City Planning is hosting a Neighborhood Spirit Week, a week-long celebration of heart and soul in Atlanta. You can join us for a week of activities and events as we mark the 50th anniversary of the NPUs. You can get more information by looking at the chat in just a minute, or you can text NPU ATL to 24251 on your cell phone. Department of City Planning is also continuing, as Debbie mentioned, revisions to the city's comprehensive development plan, also known as Plan A. If you go to atlantaforall.com, you can get much more information about that process, including the upcoming round 3 meetings about the various Plan A document itself. You also can see presentations and materials from the past meetings and whatnot there also. You also know, and as Debbie pointed out, we're continuing to work on the zoning, rewrite of the zoning ordinance called ATL 2.0 zoning. And then back in May, we released the draft of what was called Module 1, which was about the form and frontage or size of districts, and then the uses of different zoning districts. So if you go to atlzoning.com, you can review and comment on the draft of that first module. And you can follow along with any updates on meetings and other opportunities for input there as well. Couple upcoming NPU University courses. On July 27th is the Atlanta Community Engagement Playbook session. On July 31st is a bylaws clinic. On August 8th is a election integrity clinic. And on August 29th is navigating mortgage and renter challenges. You can get more information about all those in the link I'll put in the chat. And then lastly, for tonight is the next installment of the Atlanta City Studio Office of Design Book Club, which will be July 30th at 6:30 p.m. More details about that will be available in the chat as well. And that is the planner's report for this month.
Great, thanks. Any questions for Doug? Were you ever able to find the definition?
No, I was not, and I'll talk to Miss Kieta Holmes and relay back that to you all.
Okay, great, thank you. Okay, and then the last thing on the agenda is just to go through the neighborhood and committee reports. We usually do this fairly quickly. Linda Martin Manor, anything that you want to report? I think Scott was the only one from Linda Martin Manor here. Okay, Piedmont Heights.
Hi, Debbie. Bill Compton. Hope you're well.
I'm good.
We do have a membership drive currently underway. We kicked off about a week ago. And that's probably the most significant update at the moment.
Okay, great. Thank you. Morningside Lennox Park. All right, Virginia Highland, anything to report? Okay. Emory CDC area. Parks, Trees and Environment, Rich is not here tonight. Education Committee. Marla is not here tonight. Public Safety, Kay, did you want to talk about the Zone 6?
Yeah, we have, as some of you know, we have in Zone 6 a quarterly State of the Zone meeting with the major, with safety leads from all of the different neighborhoods in Zone 6. That took place last Wednesday. A couple of things in the crime statistics. Crime is down 12% compared to this time last year, and we're not seeing the normal increase in crime that we typically have in the summer. Motor vehicle thefts are down 25%, and that's largely, they think, due to both the software changes to the Kia and Hyundai cars and the steering wheel locks that APD has been giving out. You know, I think we all sort of had it in our head that they, you know, maybe had a few hundred of those. In fact, they have given out thousands of them. And the reason that the city bought, their first order was for 5,000, and they have since reordered and given away even more. And the reason is that the city is aware of how much money they're losing. The estimate is something like between 20 and $25 million a year that's being lost to time to report those cases, insurance loss, the loss of for the damage repair and all of that. So it's really worth the city making that investment. Here in Zone 6, we're piloting a new shift schedule with officers working a 4-day week and 10-hour shifts. What that allows is that between day watch and evening watch, you have a 2-hour overlap where you have more officers on at the same time, and the same is happening between evening watch and morning watch. And what they're seeing is improved response times in Zone 6 because of those surged officers at the same time. Obviously, that brings increased officer safety because they have better backup when they go on dangerous calls. And they're also seeing a decline in officers calling in sick because they're now working a 4-day week. They can plan on that day, that weekday that they have off, to do appointments and things with their kids and all of that. So we expect that it's going well in our pilot, and we expect that will be rolled out citywide at some point. And then the other thing is there are 2 new units. We talked a little bit last month about this. One of them is the CARES program. And this is a program for trained civilians. You'll see them driving around in black pickup trucks with a lime green stripe on it. And these are trained civilians who can take reports typically where there's no injury or there's no evidence to be collected. So you don't really need a sworn officer, you just need a report taker. And they also will help with controlling traffic at crime scenes and that sort of thing. So that frees up our officers, our sworn officers, to do more critical policing. And you can access that either through 311 or 911. You can call, but if you believe that you don't need a sworn officer to come, just call 311 and ask for a care team representative to come out. The other program is called a co-responder program. And it's a situation where you have a behavioral health worker that's going to ride along with an officer. That team will be dedicated for the whole shift, that they will only respond to those calls where there's a need for a trained professional to do de-escalation. They'll obviously be somewhat selective. If it's a really dangerous situation, you're not going to take a social worker into a situation where there's likely to be a shootout, for example. But I think this is a positive step that APD is taking to address the issues that we've seen when there's a mental health crisis, and the police aren't necessarily equipped to deal with that. And then the final thing, Debbie mentioned that Club Platinum is back on the agenda for the LRB on Tuesday. That's the 23rd at 5 p.m. downtown. If you will recall, we've been dealing with Club Platinum at least since 2021. This is just drug on and on and on. But the NPU, when we had an opportunity to weigh in on this one, did recommend denial, and we will be going downtown to speak out on that, and anyone else who feels strongly about that. We do now have an opportunity to do public comment before the meeting, so please consider coming down and sharing your experience with the board so they know that the neighborhood feels strongly about this one. That's all I've got. Thanks, Debbie.
Did you want to mention unknown flow?
Oh, yeah. I kind of, so we had a discouraging one. You know, we had unknown flow, which is going into the previous Taverna Planca space that we voted on and recommended denial, because there were so many things in the application that didn't add up and didn't make sense. We went to the LRB meeting 5 weeks ago, and based on a lot of what we told the board, they made the recommendation that it be held for 30 days, basically so that applicant could get her act together. In the meantime, we went and actually looked at the site and discovered that they had done all kinds of significant modifications to the building, in complete violation of our neighborhood zoning regulations, and they had done it without a permit. They never bothered to pull a building permit to do the work. In addition, they had improperly posted their notice for the alcohol license. There were just a whole host of issues. We went down last week expecting that it would be deferred again, and the law department overruled us and forced it to go forward. We tried to make our case, but because many of the issues were zoning related, the LRB did not agree with us, and we lost that one. So these folks are going to get an alcohol license. There's no doubt in my mind or in the mind of anyone who's actually been inside the establishment that this will be a nightclub despite being licensed as a restaurant. So we will probably get an opportunity at some point in the future to fight that one again. Debbie, did you want to add anything?
No, I don't think I could think of anything appropriate to add.
Yeah, it was a discouraging outcome. We really thought we had a shot at this one, but it didn't work out.
No. So I have just 2 items as part of the chair report. The first under APAB, the July meeting of APAB is next Saturday. So I'll report next month on those activities. And then a reminder that we need to confirm our bylaws and policy sheet in the month of September, which means in the month of August, we need to review any proposed changes so folks have an opportunity to consider and talk about them before we actually take a vote. The executive committee and others will be meeting on July 29th. Information about that meeting is on the consent agenda. And unfortunately, I don't have the link yet. So if you're interested in attending the meeting, just send me an email and I'll get you the link as soon as the person that assigns us to rooms is available. And that is the end of our agenda. Is there anything else that needs to come before the NPU tonight? Okay, seeing none. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay, does someone want to second that?
I'll second it, Debbie.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, if there's no objections, the meeting is adjourned. Don't forget that you can save the chat. They've moved the 3 dots. It's now at the top of the meeting chat window. You click on the 3 dots and you'll see a prompt for saving. Go ahead and do that. And all that great information that we've gotten from our presenters tonight will be there for you. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's a good meeting.